Hey everyone, it is Keith McGinnis here with KCDC Designs out of Eagle, Nebraska. This Clara marble technique, or what was used to call the watercolor technique, is absolutely amazing. So we're going to jump right into it and I'll explain as I go along. I'm using alcohol dyes. They're not alcohol inks, but they're alcohol dyes using a Lumelite dye mixed in with 91% isopropyl alcohol. And the color mixing guide Clara Lawrence has put out is absolutely amazing. So it just takes some practice with this, but there's different ways that you can put down the dyes and then use your, I don't use a heat gun, but I use a blow dryer. It's actually a compact blow dryer to move those colors around to get the design that you desire. And there are so many different ways to create designs using this. And so there's my blow dryer. And so let's listen in for a minute. Yeah, I like that. Hang on, we got to back up. Things didn't go that smooth. That was actually round 3. So let's see what happened in rounds 1 and round 2. And as we get going on a little bit further, when I'm doing the rest of the project, I'll explain in more detail how to prep the piece that you're going to do this technique with. But once again, let's listen in. I don't know. I don't like it. I just don't like it. Now this part right here, here's the real glory of this technique. If you put down a design and you don't like it, spray it down with isopropyl alcohol, wipe it off, and start over. Now you will notice that there is some staining on that upper corner. And that staining is caused by it's actually a mica powder that I have mixed in with the isopropyl alcohol. But I'm not concerned about it. It actually provides a little bit of an undertone, and I know I'm going to be going with colors over that area anyway. So as I'm working on round 2 here, let's talk a little bit about how I prepped that piece to get it ready to apply this watercolor or Clara marble technique, because Clara Lawrence is the one who really came up with this and then taught the rest of us how to do this. But to start, you need to have a smooth, slick surface. So what I did was I could have just painted the MDF. I could have just painted that white and gone over with clear isopropyl alcohol or clear epoxy, and that would have given me a white background to start with. But I wanted to have some visual interest in that background because there's going to be a lot of negative space. I'm not going to have color over the whole entire bathroom vanity. Plus there's going to be a sink in the middle of it. So if you look close, actually in one of the reflections in the light, I used blue pearl, and then I used to use white metallic. It's really, really cool if you see it up close and personal. So that's what I did for kind of a backdrop, if you will, before I started with the technique. And the alcohol dyes are created by adding drops of the Lumelite dyes to 91% isopropyl alcohol. And then I have those small applicator bottles is what I'm using to apply those colors to the surface. There's many, many different ways that you can apply the colors in long streaks. You can put them in dots. You can blow it side to side. I like to come down from up over the top. So you really have to work with it to find out what it is and what you like. So again, remember, this is round 2. So let's listen in again. Okay. It's the colors. It's the colors that are throwing me off. With this customer, I'm really limited to just the gray. She doesn't want a whole lot of gray and the blues, but we don't want a whole lot of blues. So I'm trying to figure out how I can get these colors on here and get them to blend well and still go good together. We're gonna let that dry. I like that. That looks good. Now we'll continue from where I left off in the beginning because I like what I got started with, and I think I'm onto something. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, put down onto the surface, and that's kind of the vehicle, if you will, to allow those alcohol dyes to move around. And as you work with the alcohol dyes, you'll find times you'll want more alcohol down on the surface, less alcohol down on the surface, and again, how you apply your colors as you see what I'm doing here. Do you stack them on top of each other? Do you put them beside each other? And as I'm doing this section here, you'll see I am kind of stacking the colors, and then as I get those moved around with my blow dryer, I kind of end up with kind of splotches, if you will, 5 spots. But you can put more alcohol on there, you can put a little bit more dye on there, and continue to get everything to move the way you want it to move. That color that I'm adding right there, by the way, is Blue Pearl. You can't see it in the video, but it's a very, very transparent color, and really it's more iridescent than anything else. But it again, it's hard to see on the video, and it's even hard to see. Well, actually, during the flyover, you'll be able to see it, but it's the pearl blue, and really has a really cool iridescent look. So here again, I'm using the hairdryer to move things around, and there's those kind of 5 splotches, and you'll see how I'm going to remedy that, and how I'm going to fix that by I'm adding in some more alcohol because I can continue to move those colors around. I can kind of wake them back up, if you will, and get them to kind of blend into each other, then almost fade into one another, and you can kind of see how they're starting to do that. And then if I want to add a little bit more color here and there, which I think I'm going to do, I'm not quite sure, but I think I'm going to add a little bit more color in there to kind of get things to move around. So I've got that kind of mid-sized squirt bottle for when I want to add some more alcohol. And then I also have one of my little applicator bottles that has clear alcohol in it when I really want to concentrate if I want alcohol in just a small area. So I use the big bottle to kind of put a little bit more product down to get it over the board. Then I use my the mid-sized one if I want to add some more alcohol in an area, and then I have the small one if I want it more concentrated. So let's talk about the colors that I'm using. And again, all of these colors came from the mixing guide. That you can find that mixing guide on claralawrenceart.com. And I think there's about 100 different recipes for different colors. But what I'm using is I'm using gray, brown mid, there's a light brown, mid brown, dark brown, etc. Blue light, and then there's the pearl blue, which is a mica powder that gives it that iridescent look. And then I also am using mica powders from, oh my goodness, Resin Art. And I mix 2 together. One is called Mermaid, the other one's called Turquoise. And I mix the 2 of those together and then mix those with the isopropyl alcohol. And that's what gave that Mermaid Turquoise look. And then for the accent, because the customer is going to have a chrome sink, there is it's called 002. Some of you may be familiar with the 007 gold. Well, this is 002 silver. And it's a silver that it kind of gathers, if you will, on the surface. And I'm able to move that around, and that's really kind of an accent to be able to kind of highlight that chrome faucet. So those are the colors that I'm using, and again, you can see how I continue to work that with the hairdryer and move things around. Remember those 5 splotches I had? How now they're all kind of blended together. So I think I'm kind of getting on a roll here, and I'm really liking the way things are looking. All starting off with, you just kind of move it around until you get it the way you like it. So I'm going to speed this up. When I get to the bottom left corner as you're looking at the video, if I remember correctly, I put the colors down on there, didn't like them, wiped it off, and started over again. So always remember, you basically have an eraser with paper towels and isopropyl alcohol. And if you get even some areas where it blows a little bit too far out than you want it, you can take a paper towel with some isopropyl alcohol and blot that away or wipe that up. So I'm going to speed it up at this point and kind of let you see how I am moving things around to finish off the rest of the project. So I've had some questions regarding this technique that see how there are some outlines in some areas there. Sometimes on those outlines it will appear like you have little beads, like the alcohol dyes are beading up. You can add a little bit more isopropyl alcohol to that and smooth those out. What you can also do is you can take a paper towel as it starts to dry and the alcohol evaporates. Those areas are still going to be wet, and you can take a paper towel and very lightly, very carefully blot those areas to remove what you see as those little beads on there. So first try putting a little bit more alcohol on there and moving those around. Again, it's just a matter of working with it. This is not a difficult technique at all. It's just a matter of the colors that you're using, the design that you like, and how you want to manipulate and move those colors around. Remember when I said I might not like this area that I'm working on right here? I didn't. So what do? Wipe it off, erase the slate, and start over. Again, that really is the glory of this technique, is that you're able to spray it down and wipe it off. Might be a large area, might be a small area. I've had some where there was some parts in the middle I didn't like, and I was able to blot that away or wipe that off with isopropyl alcohol and start over. I want to point you over to that bottom right area. You can see where the glare is in there. That's where you can kind of see some of the iridescence of that blue pearl. It is really, really cool. So anyway, I'm going to go with second attempt here. And again, don't be alarmed if you see some stains like what you do right there. Remember in that what is the upper right hand corner, there was some stains there. You don't see them anymore. So I'm going to lay these colors out just a little bit differently because I didn't like the way it kind of landed the first time. The first color I put down was gray. This is the brown, and the brown is to match the customer's cabinetry. Get a little bit more gray in there. There's no real science to it. There's some of the 002 silver. That's going to add the accents to tie in with the chrome faucet. We got a couple of the different blues in there. Remember there was the blue light, and then there's also the mermaid / turquoise. And so I'm going to start moving those around. The alcohol will dissipate or evaporate on you fairly quickly, and just add some more. But I'll give you a word of caution. Be careful when you're adding more alcohol. Don't squirt the bottle too hard, or you will end up with drips and drops as it squirts. And the other one is when you shake up the bottle, make sure you got your finger over the top of it. There comes a point, I believe in here, I don't know if I've got it on camera or not, but I was shaking up one of the bottles and I didn't have my finger quite over the top, and it splattered all over the surface. Again, I was just able to take a paper towel with some isopropyl alcohol and wipe that off. There you can see I'm getting a little more concentrated of where I put a little bit more isopropyl alcohol and then adding a little bit more color. Again, to just kind of move things around. You stand back and you look at it, and I don't know, there's just something that you'll see it, you'll look at it, and it either looks right or it doesn't look right. And also, does that area that you're working blend in with the other areas that you already have on the surface? So take your time, have fun with it, practice with it. This piece right here is the actual customer's vanity top, and this is the third round on here. So I was using a different board as a sample board, but then I thought, man, if I get something the customer really likes, am I going to be able to replicate that same thing? So knowing I can wipe it off, I thought, well, I'm just going to use the actual project as my sample board, knowing that I can wipe it off and start over if I want to. On this one in particular, by the time I got done with it, I sent the picture off to the customer, and she called me on the phone, and her comment was, Keith, you nailed it. So I knew I had it. Plus, when I looked at it, I didn't like the first two that I did, and there was full sample boards that I did before this one that I sent to the customer. I didn't like them, but I wanted to see if she did. One had too much gray, the other one had too much blue. Wipe it off, start over again, and see what happens. So let's speed this up through the rest of this, and you'll see how I complete this project. I guess a couple other things to be aware of. Knowing that, know the size of the sink that's going to go in the countertop. and how that's going to fit in with the design, and how the design is maybe going to, or the sink, how the sink is going to complement your design or vice versa. So this is going to be a drop-in sink. I did want to have some negative space in here. I didn't want the whole entire thing covered with color. And I felt that that was a really good choice, because I think the negative space that's in there really helps kind of accentuate the overall design, especially because that negative space has those undertones with that white metallic and that pearl blue. And it really, really looks cool when you're standing over the top of it. Remember when I was talking about if you see some spots or blots or areas that just don't quite look right? That's what I'm doing right here, is taking my paper towel and just tapping those out. You can see that one I just did. It was a fairly dark dot, and I just blotted it out with my paper towel. So just kind of do a little bit of cleanup.
Okay, on to the next step. Now that I have my design put down, and I've used alcohol dyes, and some of these have dye mixed in with isopropyl alcohol. Some of these have mica powder mixed in with isopropyl alcohol. The alcohol is just the medium used to get the color down onto the surface and get the design and the pattern the way you like it. Once all of that alcohol has dissipated and evaporated, what you're left with on the surface is the actual dyes and the mica powders. So if I were to take my hand and rub my hand across here, I'm going to smear all those colors. I don't even want to take a paper towel to wipe this down, because I'm going to smear all of the colors. So I need to seal all of this down so that the resin doesn't reactivate all of that. And so the way to seal that down, there's a couple different options. You can use the Rust-Oleum Clear Matte Spray Paint. My first choice is Krylon's UV Archival Spray, always in a matte finish. If you use a gloss, there is something in the propellants that can reactivate the dyes and the mica powder. So always a matte finish. My first choice is the Krylon UV Archival Spray. I can't always find that, but I can find it online. What I can find locally is Krylon UV Resistant Clear Matte Spray Paint. So this I can find locally, and so this is what I use. Now it's important, again, I don't want to put wet coats down. All I'm looking to do, and all I want to do, is just seal all of the dyes and the mica powders. Basically, I'm putting a layer over that. I'm sealing that down, so again, so that epoxy doesn't reactivate. Now, when I do spray this, I want to make sure that I spray along this bottom edge also, because remember, when we're putting our epoxy on there, we roll our hand underneath that edge. I roll my hand underneath that edge, look what comes up. If you can see that, those are the mica powders. Okay, so what I can also do, and what I am going to do, that's one of those, come to think about it, I'm going to wipe that bottom edge so I don't pick that up when I'm putting on my clear coat. See, that's quite a bit of material that came off of there. And if I don't get that off of there, and I don't seal that with the spray paint, I can reactivate that, or I'm going to get that on my hands, and then I'm going to end up spreading that on the surface. So now that I've got all that done, always make sure that you are wearing protective equipment. Make sure you wear a respirator. In my studio, I have an extremely powerful, I way overpowered my exhaust system. So when I turn my exhaust system on, you can almost hear the walls sucking in. So I have to have windows open in the other room, and then that is filtered before it comes through here. But it does a really good job of getting all of spray paint fumes and everything else out here. So I'm going to get that turned on, and we'll get that sealed. Okay, remember, we want light dusting coats.
Now, typically for me, because I do put on those light dusting coats, it usually takes about 3 coats of the spray paint to be able to seal down all of those colors. And the way that I can tell is after I get my second or third coat on, I'll take a dry paper towel and I'll just blot it in some areas to make sure that the color is not going to transfer to the paper towel. Once I know that all those colors have been sealed, Then all I need to do is let that spray paint dry, which dries very, very quickly, and I'm ready for my flood.
Okay, now that I've got 3 coats on there, I can take my paper towel very lightly and just blot some areas, make sure that nothing is going to come up, which it did not. So I can take my roll of paper towels and very lightly, all I'm doing is just getting the overspray off the surface and nothing is coming up on my paper towel. So I know that I am good now and ready for a flood coat, and so that is going to be the next step.
All right, so my project is just a little under 8 square foot. So at 3 ounces per square foot, I'm going to mix up 24 ounces of epoxy. Make sure that you mix your epoxy well at a 1-to-1 ratio. Scrape your sides, mix again. Make sure that you have your product thoroughly mixed. Can't stress that enough.
All right, let's get a flood coat on here. Ooh, should I put some diamond dust in there? Maybe just a little. Oh. Ooh, silver glitter or diamond dust? A little bit of diamond dust. Just a tad. Popsicle stick. All right, so let's get some on there. Make sure we save enough for, let's get our backsplashes done now.
Now I do like to use a trowel when I apply a flood coat because that way I know my 3 ounces per square foot is going to give me full and complete coverage. With this particular design, you want to be cautious of make sure that you use that epoxy resin that's on the surface as a lubricant when you are troweling that out so you don't scratch the surface. Then after I trowel it out, I'm going to use my hand to get out those trowel marks, make sure I've addressed the edges, make sure that I roll that epoxy under those edges. Remember, that's why we sealed that with the spray, with the clear spray paint, and then also wiping the underside of that edge so we don't get it on our hands. And then we're going to torch out the bubbles. And I got some more information on torching coming up here.
Now again, because those are alcohol dyes and mica powders, I'm not going to get too carried away with torching, and I don't want to get it too hot. All I'm trying to do with the torch, and our only purpose of the torch, is to pop bubbles. We're not looking to heat up the surface. We're not looking to heat up the epoxy. We just want to pop bubbles. Okay, I want to stress a bit of importance of torching out bubbles with your flood coat. When you're torching out bubbles on your flood coat, it is extremely important that you get all the bubbles popped. So sometimes, based upon your lighting, it's going to be very difficult for you to see whether or not there are any micro bubbles that you missed. If you miss any micro bubbles, if you are torching only in one direction, and notice how my finger is only hitting certain areas. In between, if there's some micro bubbles in there that don't get popped, as the epoxy starts to set up, those bubbles need to escape. Well, this might be 2, 3, 4 hours after you have poured the epoxy and it's starting to really, really thicken up. If that bubble pops, it's not fluid enough to self-level, and it's going to leave a dimple or a little divot. So sometimes when people say they end up divots in their flood coat, that's why, is because they're unpopped bubbles. So one of the things that you can do to try to prevent that is I will torch this direction back and forth. Then I'm going to torch this direction back and forth. And then one last time this way. So I'm going both directions in case I get in a habit, or I'm going too far apart and not getting all those micro bubbles popped.
Wow, this turned out so pretty. This is a bathroom vanity, which unfortunately I have to cut a hole out of the middle of it for the sink. But wow, the colors, pattern, design really, really looks nice. And it's really hard to see in the camera, but the undertones that are in there, and then there's also, I put a little bit of diamond dust in there. Right there you can see a little bit of the undertones, which is some white metallic. But it also has a little bit of diamond dust in there that gives it just a little bit of a bling factor. But man, that is so pretty.
Matches the colors in the customer's bathroom and the colors that she liked and the colors that she wanted. There are a couple areas here. She's going to have a white sink with a chrome faucet. And if I get the glare in there just right, you can see, yeah, it's hard to tell. Right there, there we go. Kind of some chrome accents to help set off the chrome faucet. But really, really a pretty piece. I hope you guys like it.
Thank you all so much for watching. Once again, this is Keith McGinnis with KCDC Designs out of Eagle, Nebraska. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate your support on my YouTube channels, and I'll continue to put up the tutorials as long as I know you all enjoy them, are liking them, and I would love to hear some suggestions of what you'd like to see. So thanks again, everyone, and we will see you on the next video.